Howdy folks, welcome to another episode of DevOps Diaries, where today I am excited to be joined by Ian Gotts and Jack Lavous of Elements.cloud. Welcome to you both.
Hi there.
Hi Jack, thanks for having us.
No, it's my pleasure to have you. And today we're going to be talking a lot about one of Elements' favorite topics at the moment, and one of the Salesforce ecosystem's favorite topics at the moment, Agentforce. And Ian, I wanted to start the conversation by talking to you a little bit. You've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for a long time. How different does Agentforce feel compared to other releases that Salesforce has made on the platform?
I don't think it compares with anything. I mean, if I think about when, say, Chatter got launched, and that felt like quite a big move, because actually suddenly we were moving into a whole sort of conversational world, and it was the end of email. But if you think about what's happening with agents, not just with Salesforce, but across the entire tech landscape, the way that, I mean, 2 years ago people went, "Oh, ChatGPT, we can write poems," and people got very excited about like the potential for that. We've now had to reel that back and go, okay, but then how would you apply some of that more, conversational type approach allied to some technology? This feels as big a shift as from on-premise to cloud, which is obviously before Salesforce even started. So in terms of Salesforce's world, this is turning everything completely upside down, at the same time as being able to build on all the data that's sitting there, all the back-end workflows. So it's a funny mix. Yes, it's transformational, but we can also build on what we've already got. But I do think there is one thing which is very different, which is, unless you've got some of the core disciplines in place, which is well understood business processes, a well governed, strong governance around your data, a good understanding about how your org works, you're never going to take advantage of the metadata of Agentforce, and therefore I think this is certainly shining a spotlight on the well-run orgs, and those people who are running it well, I think will be the people able to benefit most quickly.
Absolutely. Jack, I understand that you've been doing a lot of the work internally at Elements.cloud on Agentforce and implementing it. How well run is Elements.cloud's Salesforce org?
Well, very good, because we've got an agent with 5 working topics in production at the moment. So we started the journey shortly after Dreamforce, I say, and it's probably fair, because we went to Dreamforce and Agentforce was everywhere, and we very much came back to the UK office and sat down as a team and went, okay, so how can we, one, as a customer, implement Agentforce and get benefit as a business, but 2, also as a partner of Salesforce, how can we then support the ecosystem with implementing agents as well? So it's been a bit of a journey the last
for sure
months.
For sure. But for people that might be only just beginning their Agentforce journey, you mentioned you've got 5 working topics in Elements Cloud Salesforce implementation right now. What's a topic?
Good question. So a topic, so think of your agent essentially as 3 levels. So you've got your agent at the top. So at the moment we're using the Copilot, Einstein Copilot, which is being rebranded as an agent. And then underneath your agent, you then have something called topics. So think of a topic as it's a job that an agent needs to be able to do or complete. So when I first went on this Agentforce journey, it was very much, okay, so I have an agent. What do I want my agent to be able to do? And then this is where the business process context comes in, because think of an agent as it's digital labor, right? So when you bring on a new recruit into your business, you're not just going to give them a task and go, there we go and complete it. You have to not handhold them, but you have to give them a process to follow and go to complete that job to be done, that task. So think of a topic as a job that your digital labor, your agent, needs to complete. So that's probably the easiest way to define a topic for somebody that's new to Agentforce. Is it's effectively a job that needs to be done by digital labor.
Yeah, this is the job description.
Sorry?
Well, what are some of the examples of the things we've got live?
Yeah, so the big one we've got at the moment is our Discovery Framework Sales Coach. So like any sales coach, we can offer role play, can offer feedback on how you're doing with a particular client and engaging on a call. But we've actually built on top of that our discovery framework. So we take a call transcript from an external service. The agent can then analyze it. It can score how we're doing with a discovery framework, and then just give suggestions, role play. We're able to book vacation internally, so our end users can go onto Salesforce and have a conversation and book a holiday. And there's some smart stuff it can do around checking weekends, checking bank holidays in the UK. We have bank holidays as well as you do in the US. So yeah, we have 5 topics at the moment, very much all internal, but they're beneficial across different areas of the business.
Yeah, Ian, you look like you're thinking and pondering quite closely there. What are you thinking?
I think what's interesting is that a lot of the stories are about customer-facing agents. And I think the risk of putting a customer-facing agent out is way higher than building internal agents to start with. Okay, you get it wrong. Customers maybe don't even give you the feedback; they just never come back. Whilst if you start building agents internally, as we have, first of all, you've got a smaller audience. You've also got a more forgiving audience, and you're getting great feedback. So I think we focused there first, which is like, and some of the things, it's interesting. This one about booking vacation. Someone said, but you could build a flow to do that. Yeah, I know. But we wanted to build an agent to work out how an agent works. So let's build stuff that we know how to work. So one of the topics is frequently asked questions around HR policy. So it finds out which country you're in, what level of seniority you are, and therefore it will then use that as the context for answering questions about like vacation policy or travel policy or any HR policy. Relatively simple, but actually takes a ton of work away from HR, but actually it's also there 24/7 and it understands the context. So a relatively simple use case, but focused around everyone in the business. That's the first thing. Then you go the other end, more complicated, the one that Jack talks about, the sales coach. Again, 26 steps, 5 actions, quite complicated, but we've learned so much in doing that. So I think, yeah, there's a return on investment on some of the things we're doing around agents, but as much is actually our learning about what's possible. And the guy who built that simple agent he graduated 3 months ago with a degree in international business. So we're also looking at how relatively junior people can get up to speed. He and then another junior guy in the company went, hang on, could we build an agent to build agents? I'm like, that's a bit meta.
And can you have they started doing that?
Jack, over to you.
Yeah, yes is the short answer. So what they've basically done is they've taken the methodology we're going to the ecosystem with around building agents, process-led approach, and it basically the agent can suggest a process to be followed that you can then put into Agent Builder as a topic. And what they're doing is in theory quite complicated, but actually when you sit down and go through the process of what they're doing in terms of the process the agent's doing, so the job to be done, it's actually relatively simple. And it's, the idea of it is to help the ecosystem build agents. And what we're seeing in particular is that, and we'll probably come on to our approach in a bit more depth, is agents work. I think that's really important, but they only sometimes work if you aren't following a process-led approach. And through our experience, that's what we're finding. It's the if this happens, then do this. If you take that approach and take that methodology, you go from agents working to sometimes working. It's really powerful what we're doing there, particularly with the agent that can build an agent.
Yeah. So, you mentioned one of your graduates 3 months out of university built this agent for you simplistically. The barrier to entry for technology with things like agents and the tools that Salesforce are giving us to easily implement something like an agent on the platform is significantly less than what it might be to refactor a whole bunch of Apex code and hundreds of lines of code for actions that might have been used in triggers and what have you. If there is, just by volition of somebody's been able to work this out 3 months coming out of university, where's the real challenge and the real skill when building agents? If we're given this declarative functionality to easily build an agent and actually implement the technology, where's the real skill and where's the real understanding need to be so that your agent can be successful? Jack, you've talked about understanding of business processes quite a lot, and how much how much time needs to be invested at that front end if we shift left, which I know is another favorite topic of yours.
So let's take a step back. What we've discovered is if you just go into Agent Builder and start typing instructions, you will end up with, as Jack calls it, an agent that sometimes works. Okay? It's rather like coming to an intern and saying to an intern, right, you've just joined the company, right, I'll give you 4 or 5 instructions, off you go, come back if you've got any problems. And they come back a little bit later, go, no, don't do that, and you give them some more instructions. Then you come back and they give some more, and eventually they go, hang on, some of those instructions are in conflict. What do you want me to do? Instead, if you take a view, okay, what is it the job to be done? If you document that as a process, the process diagram will then write the instructions. So a couple of benefits of having this diagram. Number one, you can engage some stakeholders. So back to this situation with the sales coach. Elliot could work with the senior, the sales leadership and go, okay, what is it you want us to do? And you can have a discussion about, okay, we wanted to do that. So first of all, the diagram is quite useful because it engages and gets everyone on the same page. Secondly, it generates the instructions automatically. But then if the agent doesn't work, don't fiddle around with the instructions. Go back to the diagram and go, why didn't it work? Okay, right, we've missed something or we haven't thought about it. Go back and change the diagram. Then you're getting some diagram versioning, but also it regenerates the instructions and tests. So it actually is a more methodical approach. So that's why this approach works. You asked me about the skill set. The skill set is business analysis. Right? Tell me what you want this thing to do and how you want it to work. And let's have a discussion with whoever wants the agent. How does this thing work? Let's take the other example, about vacation planning. Doesn't sound that hard. You want to go and book some vacation. But when you start getting into, you can't book over a calendar year. We need to check whether you've got enough vacation left. Oh, hang on. What happens if you try and book it in the past, which is you went on vacation, but you want to book it? There's quite a lot of, the happy path is very easy, but then when you start thinking about the other end, it gets a bit more complicated, and therefore you need the diagram. So the key skill is business analysis. And I've been bleating about this for the last probably year about business analysis being the key skill when we start thinking about agents, but it genuinely is. Now, the agent to build an agent still requires you to be able to ask the right questions. You can't just go, build me an agent that does vacation planning. There's a bit more to it than that. Even the way you have the conversation with our agent to help you build the diagram. Once it's built the diagram, you've still got to go back and go, that was a great first cut. Okay, now let's engage whoever the business owners are with them and go, okay, is this exactly what you want to work? Before we build the agent, let's make sure we understand how this works. The building the agent bit, I think, is relatively easy. You push the Jack will disagree with me.
Yeah, we're about to have an argument.
Yeah, no, but you push the button and you've got the instructions. Someone still then needs to go and build the flow or the prompt builder, but they're skills that the Salesforce ecosystem has. They know how to build flows. And I'll say one last thing and I'll stop talking. I don't think we're going to be taking existing flows and refactoring them. I think we'll find there's so much technical debt that people will go, just to get stuff going, I'll build a new flow. I'll build a new prompt template. The challenge then builds over time. You build more agents. You need to start managing all this technical debt, or you need to at least make sure you understand what you've got. And again, that obviously Elements fits in there. But again, we need to take a more structured approach to building these things rather than maybe the way that the Salesforce marketing suggests, which is anybody can build an agent, let's start typing. There's a bit more structure to it than that.
And I'm just going to jump in there. Sorry, Jack. I think what was really interesting, particularly on the booking a vacation, the process we went through to build that topic was because we took a very similar process-led approach to what we did with our existing holiday booking system. So at the moment, we've got screen flows in Salesforce. All of our booking a vacation is done through Salesforce. What we found is when we actually sat down with the correct stakeholders and went through the agent process, the process the agent going through is actually stronger and more reliable than what we were using prior to having the agent. So it comes back to this business analysis point. We've basically done business analysis on business analysis and actually come out with a better process through an agent. So that was a really interesting insight when we were going through it. We were going, okay, this is actually better than what we currently had using AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about job to be done and the job to be done framework. for those unfamiliar with the job to be done framework, how do you approach a task like building an agent with the job to be done framework? What was kind of the mental space that you were in approaching this and applying the JTBD framework?
Ian, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at first we were very much going. For us, it was understanding the structure and the hierarchy of how an agent works. That was the first thing we did. So it was very much okay. So we have this agent. What are the skills of this agent? So what do we want this agent to be able to deliver on? So a skill for us could be a HR vacation assistant. It could be a general FAQ skill. It could be a sales coach, for example. Then under each of those skills, we then went, okay, so for the HR vacation assistant, what are the jobs to be done? So we applied the job to be done framework and individually went, okay, what are the processes and the jobs we need to do for this skill? And what we actually found was, particularly with the vacation booking assistant, is we kind of went a bit gung-ho. So we went, okay, so we have a HR vacation assistant. We're going to get it to book a vacation, cancel a vacation, check availability, check for duplicates and check for clashes, all in one job to be done. And what we very quickly found was, one, the process becomes very complicated because you've got several paths, several actions, several different agent instructions. So then we went, okay, let's apply this job to be done framework, and we split it up. So we went, okay, this skill now has effectively 5 jobs to be done. So it has 5 different topics. So it has booking a vacation as one topic, cancelling a vacation as another, checking availability as your third. And because we've done that, the agent actually executing on that job to be done is more reliable and more responsive because you're not overloading it with information, which is why we went down the job to be done route, particularly for the topics.
Yeah, we use the job to be done framework quite a lot here at Gearset when we think about building products and what our users are actually trying to do, because it's no good. Very product-led organization. User feedback is central to who we are as a product, and very often we'll get requests like, can I have a button here so that I have this, right? And it's when you dig deeper and you say, well, why do you actually want that button? What's the expected outcome? The solution is something entirely different somewhere else that helps them actually achieve the thing that they want. What they want is a set of results popped up into my emails for this reason, or actually they need it in a dashboard, or they need it somewhere else. So just going that extra level deeper in a job to be done framework, or the 5 whys, I think is a popular thing that gets thrown about these days too, is kind of central to the success of an agent or a human. Even it can be applied to both.
100%, completely agree. And again, it comes back to this business analysis piece. We use the 5 whys when we're running process workshops internally. It's understanding what the stakeholder wants, so then you can then reflect that into your agent job, basically.
So I was at a conference, we went to Architect Dreaming and Cactus Force, and we're in one of the sessions talking about Agentforce, and the general feeling from the room was, this is really hard. I mean, can't find any use cases, the return on investment, I don't understand, this is just... And I had to sort of break that pattern because I found it quite frustrating, because we've actually got some real benefits out of it. We've built agents relatively quickly. And it was quite an interesting revelation. I said, look, okay, you need to be able to build agents, you need well understood business processes, you need strong governance, data governance, and you need to understand your org, well documented org, okay? The reason everybody's finding this hard is we've all managed to get away with not doing that and still managing to get Salesforce that works, okay? This new world of agents will not let you do that because you haven't got a human going, yeah, I know you said that, but I kind of know what you meant. The agent will do exactly what you ask it to do. And therefore, the big lift that I think for the ecosystem is you've now got to go, okay, we ought to be building systems properly, so we've got to put those disciplines in place. For those people who are already well run, they're going, well, this is kind of straightforward because we're just applying a different mechanism on top of what we already do. And so I think we need to disconnect the two. Let's not go, agents are hard. Building systems properly is hard. Agents are actually just another step beyond that. If you're coming from a situation where your org is a disaster, you've got tons of technical debt, nothing's written down, it's going to be hard. You've got to get that fixed. So even if you're not ready for agents, let's go and fix that stuff first, because then you will be ready for agents. I remember when I was I was an Accenture partner for a number of years, and the tagline was "Help our clients change to be more successful." It was like more successful. Accenture would work with companies who are well run and make them even better. Agents are kind of like that. They'll make a well run organization even better. They won't help you fix a basket case. You've got to fix yourself first. And I think that's quite a big lift for a lot of organizations.
So where do you start then in fixing your org? So you mentioned documentation and an org generally being well run. Which of those problems do you tackle first? If like Elements regularly speak about documentation and having well documented org so that people can come in and understand the framework and the structure of a Salesforce implementation. You know, you can drop anybody in there, they understand how the org works, why things exist. A lot of people don't have that, as we know, but where do you start then?
I think you start with the business process piece. Yeah, you've got We're not going to make agents work every area of the business. So let's pick an area of the business where you think an agent could work, and let's understand how our org is built, and then how you map the business processes. The cool bit is at TDX we're launching something called process configuration mining. So it will look at your org metadata and draw the diagrams. But at least you're getting a starting point, and we've been quite impressed by how good that diagramming is. But you've got to start with, let's document how our business works, not just how the flow works, but actually the steps around that, because that's the bit we want to go, and that's the job to be done. So unless we've got those jobs to be done documented, which is if we're going to use it on a support call, how do our support agents work? Let's get that written down. And then we can work out what metadata is used, and then we can focus on getting some of that cleaned up and documented, and then work out where the data is coming from and make sure we've got some decent data governance around it. So I think you look at an org and go, where it's huge, we can't do all of it. And let's work out where we think tiny use cases, this is where an agent can work really well. Now let's look at that process area. Let's look at the data that we need for that. Let's look at the metadata, fix that, get a success, use that as a springboard to do the next bit, the next bit, the next bit. And yeah, AI can help you do some of that, but you've got to have you've got to get started. And I think you can use agents as the catalyst to get your executive management to go, we will invest some time doing some of this stuff properly, because the future is agents and we're going to miss out. And I'm always looking for the excuse to do the right things and tag it onto a project.
Right.
And in agents has got to be the one where if your senior management going, we need to get involved in agents, great, tag onto that and go, right, where are we going to use that? And then get them to understand the work that needs to be done, rather than listening to the marketing that says anybody can build an agent in 20 minutes. You can if you've got all this stuff in place.
Yeah. It's friend of mine, friend of the ecosystem, Jason Lance, likes to say when he talks about packaging, how do you eat an elephant? A bit at a time. Approach Agentforce the same way and your org the same way when you're looking to build agents, right? Yeah. So Jack, take me through the actual build. Did you build your agent in the same way that we're used to Salesforce development, Salesforce sandbox into production, or walk me through what that actually looked like in the implementation?
Yeah, cool. So it was starting with the process piece up front. So it was sitting down with. So I'll give you a very recent example. So I built a topic today for our again, another internal topic for our finance team. They were just about to send out a Google slide to the business with our FAQ around expense policy. So if you have any questions, go and refer to this Google slide document. So I proofread it and went, this is silly. If we, why aren't we doing this with an agent? Because people can then ask questions with it, have a conversation with it, rather than having to go to a document and go and find it. So we'll use that use case. So today I went through the process of sat down with our financial controller and basically went, look, this is what an agent can do. So I talked her through what an agent can do. We then mapped the process as in, so a user asks a question. You then want the agent to answer the question, which is going to be an action. What kind of action is it? Is it going to be a flow action? Is it going to be a prompt template? Is it going to be an Apex call out? So as part of that discussion, I'm essentially doing the agent design while sitting down with the stakeholder and going through their processes. So the agent answers the question. We then need to go back to the user and say, this is the answer provided. Are you happy with the answer? If you're not, go back, answer another question, etc. So we've mapped out that process. So in terms of the actual implementation, it's effectively classic Salesforce implementation. It's doing it in a sandbox. So using your agent builder inside a sandbox, it's taking your instructions from the process diagram that we've made, copying them into Agent Builder. So you then have one set of instructions, and the one set of instructions is really important, which I'll come on to in a moment. It's then going in again in the sandbox, creating your action. So your action being, in this case, it was a prompt template. Now you could use Data Cloud if you wanted to get the knowledge retrieval. It wasn't a massive document in terms of, it was less than 5,000 characters, so we can put it straight into a prompt template. Upload the action to your agent. Again, this is all happening inside a sandbox, and then we're just iteratively testing and developing on based on the responses and the level of conversation we're having with the agent. So as part of our generation of test utterances, it's very different to the classic testing. It's not unit testing. So it's not, if this happens, great, pass. If it doesn't, well, fail it and retest. It's a very different testing experience in that you're basically effectively testing a conversational script, because again, you're having a conversation. It's not one unit pass, one unit fail. Again, this is all happening inside the sandbox. We then invite the user in and do a bit of user acceptance testing. It's them asking questions about our expense policy. So if I don't have a receipt, how do I expense this? And the agent will come back with an answer. And it's basically going, is that responsive enough? Are you happy with the response it's giving? And then it's taking it through that DevOps cycle of, to be honest with you, I think we actually used Gearset to deploy this.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we did. Megan did it today. And it is then deploying it into production, turning on your agent, and then letting your stakeholders know where they are and how to access the agent and how to converse with it. So it's very classic Salesforce sandbox release. It's no different.
Can I add a couple of things on that though? There's not very. I mean, an agent isn't very much metadata. It's an agent. It's topics. And then you've obviously got whatever the stuff you understand is actions or prompt templates or whatever you've had to build to make it work. But a lot of the early use cases are quite knowledge centric, like policies, price books. There's also an action to go, have we written that documentation in a way that AI reads it?
It's a really good point.
If you read any of the Salesforce release notes, there's quite a lot of nuance in there. There's nothing is end of life. It's sort of no longer available. There's some words there which aren't very direct. I mean, process builder workflows, you should not build those anymore. But does it say that, or does it say that they're no longer supported, or does it say they are planning on end of life? So sometimes I think we need to go back and say, is the documentation AI ready? Bearing in mind, AI reads it like a 12-year-old who's looking for the loopholes. Okay. You got a 12-year-old, you go, I told you on Tuesday you shouldn't eat chocolate. And he's like, yeah, but it's Wednesday today. No, I told you on, you shouldn't eat chocolate all week. Yeah, but I just said I told you on Tuesday. Yeah, but it's not Tuesday. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but that's the level of detail we have to get to sometimes in terms of the prompting. We need to be quite careful in terms of the way our language works. So it's no good just going, we'll throw this document at it. We may need to think about, okay, is this document, how's it going to be read when AI is reading it? We need to start thinking about a different audience sometimes when we're writing some of this documentation.
Would you say that?
Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Joe.
Just to expand on that, that's a really good point, Ian, because we went through one of these experiences where myself and Adrian had our heads on the desk at one point, and then suddenly it clicked, and it was really simple. So the HR policy one, we've got employees around the world, and we've got our VP of Sales is based in Canada. He's a contractor, so he uses the US policy basically. And when we were testing the agent, we were basically going, what is the Canadian vacation policy? Now, we didn't want an answer back because we don't have one, because they should be using the US vacation policy, and we gave the agent instructions to do that. So what is the Canadian vacation policy? And it came back with a generic answer of what the Canadian vacation policy was. And we were sitting there for probably a good 2 to 3 minutes going, why is this coming back with a response? And it's the way you ask the question. So it's what's in the documentation, but it's also the way you engage. So we changed the word the to our. So what is our Canadian vacation policy? And it came back with the response we wanted. So changing one word in a conversational format makes a massive difference.
That's really interesting. That sounds to me like that might be the biggest. I want to say barrier to entry, but that might be the biggest barrier to entry about people getting really successful with agents is actually understanding that an AI's language can't deduce in the same way that a human's brain can deduce the intent behind what you said. It very much literally takes what you've said and applies its logic to what you've said.
It's the level of assumed knowledge for me. It was that was a really big eye opener. It was, like Ian said, you treat it almost as a 12-year-old, but in 6 months' time it could be a PhD student because it's moving that fast. And that was a big eye opener. Was okay, so we're almost having to learn how to communicate again because it doesn't have that level of assumed knowledge.
But also bear in mind, when you're coding, I mean, JavaScript gets hacked off if you miss a semicolon.
Yeah.
So, we need to assume that we are programming using a natural language here, and we need to be reasonably accurate. I think we've been seduced by I did 3 lines and it wrote me a poem. But we need to get people back from that and go, if the instructions are essentially a really efficient way of programming an agent using a natural language, we need to be quite careful about the way we've done that, hence the process-driven approach, hence being very careful about our language. And I think you're right, Jack, there is a skill there, which is we need to go, okay, we need to learn how to have a conversation with these agents in a way where we are instructing them in the correct way. And I think we'll probably be more prescriptive to start with, and then we'll learn how to back off. And a few people have looked at our process diagrams and gone, well, you're kind of building a flow. Well, there is a flow to what we're trying to do, yes. And they say, well, why don't you just build a flow? Well, there are some benefits in it, which is, first of all, the agent, the end user doesn't need to know about terminology, process, policies. They can say, I want to book some vacation. I was on holiday last week. I should have booked. There are lots of different ways rather than forcing them to find a button, work out what a drop-down menu works. So there are some benefits to the end user in terms of the agent approach. It will also guide you through and make sure it's worked out. It feels like you're being guided through a process without being very prescriptive. The second is the agent won't post that record in our vacation system unless it's got all the data. So it's not like an end user goes, oh, I don't know, just pick whatever and I'm out of here. So the agent is actually almost applying a level of validation. And then the third thing, we're programming what is a fairly complex flow just using natural language. And if it doesn't work, draw one line, change one bit of text, and suddenly we've reprogrammed it. So actually, I think we're moving into a new world, but let's not assume it can do more than it can. I think we'll be more prescriptive to start with, and then we'll have to back off. Rather than just going, it can do anything, and then being disappointed with the results.
Yeah. Are we quite ambitious in our thought about what AI can do for us already versus what it actually can?
I think it can do a hell of a lot, as any human can. But if I just hired you, Jack, today and said, great, you're on my support desk. There are a few manuals there, knock yourself out. What kind of result am I going to get out? How disappointed are you?
Here's my resignation.
That's the point, which is, as opposed to start with, I'd like you just to do support calls around our DevOps systems, and here are the DevOps, and actually this is how you escalate it. And then when you're getting really good at that, then let's give you some more skills, and now I'll start getting you to talk about business analysis and now some other things. And we need to think about it a bit more like that, rather than going, oh, this is magic. We just give it things and it does stuff. And it almost feels like the Salesforce marketing has made it feel like that. I mean, You do the Trailhead badge in 20 minutes and you've built an agent. Well, that's the same as screwing 4 legs onto an IKEA table and then believing that you can design furniture out of a tree. I mean, there's so much has been built for you, and I think we need to go back and go, okay, let's understand what it really takes, as Jack has, and Jack's been through the pain of, okay, how can we do this? But the learning curve's not. I mean, it's 3 months, I guess, but the learning curve's been really steep when you think about what Rory and Elliot are now doing.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it comes back to um, it's it's the level of simplicity you're trying to give to a fairly complex problem. And I think that's part of the key, particularly with Elliot's journey. Was he thought about it in a very simplistic way, particularly when drawing diagrams to generate instructions. He didn't try to overcomplicate the natural language, for example. He used really direct verbs, as in ask this question or answer this question or check that this data exists. It was no nuance. It wasn't process or manage, or it was very direct verbs that he was using. So I think if you take it and try and take a simplistic view to generating the instructions through the process, then some of that complexity does go away naturally, and over time you'll just get better at designing and building these agents if you take that approach.
Yeah. What's the key to building good prompt templates for your agent? Because you mentioned that as one of the key proponents of the agents that you've built. What's the key to designing and building good prompt templates?
It's very similar. So again, so this is a really good question. So when we first started exploring Agentforce, that's probably when we really started to dive into what prompt templates can do. Jack, it was as simple as what we did with our first agent was we basically wanted to answer questions with knowledge. So we looked at the default, the template, prompt template, and very quickly, I mean, we're process-driven people. I've been working with business processes for, nearly a decade now, which is scary in itself. But I looked at the prompt template, and it reads like a process. It's you've got point one, ask questions using the query input, for example, and you've got 1A, B, C, and D. So it's basically, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. It's a process. So we went away and we've basically gone, okay, so we have an agent process. We then have a prompt template, or what we believe to be a prompt template action, and we mapped it out as a process. Because when you read it and you're looking at the prompt template, it's basically a process that you're going through as, if this happens, then do this within the template. We've got probably 4 or 5 FAQ topics at the moment that we're just playing with. And a lot of it is, when I say playing, it's within the prompt template. It's just trying to find out how powerful prompt templates are and what they can actually do. The other option is obviously using Data Cloud and the knowledge retrieval, which is slightly more complex.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about Data Cloud and the knowledge retrieval? Because I understand it that Data Cloud is required in your org, but it's like kind of flicking a light switch on. You need to activate Data Cloud so that Agentforce will work and Agentforce is turned on. And I still think from conversations that I've had, people go, we're not ready for Agentforce because we haven't got Data Cloud, or Data Cloud isn't well implemented. What would you say to folks, or where is the power going to come from with Data Cloud and Data Cloud knowledge retrieval in the grander scheme of things, maybe further down the line? Because I'm not too familiar with any stories where folks have implemented Agentforce and Data Cloud and are using it to a high level of success.
So yeah, a good question. So we have implemented Data Cloud. So we're using Data Cloud so we're getting our product data from Gainsight PX, and we're using Data Cloud and the S3 buckets to go and get that data and bring it into Data Cloud, and we're exposing that data inside our org on our contacts and accounts. I think particularly with Agentforce, we're using Data Cloud at the moment around the knowledge retrieval, because the power in the knowledge retrieval compared to using a prompt template to gain knowledge is that a prompt template, you're limited to a certain number of characters. So think about our HR policy. So we're using knowledge retrieval from Data Cloud for that, because we have 10 to 20 policies that are probably 2,000 to 3,000 characters each. So we cannot put that into a prompt template because the tokens just will not allow you to call it. So I think there's a big decision to be made when you're designing, particularly your actions around knowledge retrieval, is how are you actually going to get that knowledge? My advice would be, if it's a PDF document with less than 5,000 characters, put it into a prompt template, because suddenly you don't have to mess around with retrievers, you don't have to look at the vector database, you don't have to get the file paths, because when you're building retrievers and putting them into prompt templates, it can suddenly get quite complicated and quite convoluted with, okay, so where do I go to do this? Data Cloud's over here, Agentforce is over here, I've got my Einstein Studio here, how does this all come together? I'd say we've successfully implemented Agentforce and Data Cloud particularly Data Cloud from a small level, because we're using knowledge retrieval. But it's a question I think you need to ask yourself when you're designing: is what is best to use here? Is it prompt template, or am I going to use Data Cloud to get my knowledge?
Yeah.
Just for people who are listening, and you talked about just flicking a switch. Data Cloud needs to be switched on because that's what Agentforce uses for storing the logs. So you're not incurring any credits, you're not incurring any cost if you just switch it on because it needs to be there. Okay, level 1. Level 2 is what Jack's just talked about, which is you've got a PDF, but you need it in a vector database so that it can be queried. So it's unstructured data which can be queried. So that involves putting it into a vector database, which is sort of the next level of using Data Cloud, and that's what we've been using it for. But also the third level, which is what Jack just said, which is we have actually implemented Data Cloud to aggregate data from different systems and display, and that's the sort of the classic Data Cloud implementation. We haven't started using any of that data yet necessarily, but we will. But again, if you're just embarking on Agentforce, the first level or first or second levels is where you should go. Data Cloud itself is a complex implementation and requires a bunch of disciplines of doing stuff properly. I would absolutely not suggest that your first implementation goes, oh, I wonder if we could get data from 3 different systems and then aggregate them together and then use that in Data Cloud and then use Agentforce to sit on top of that. You'll get buried in the Data Cloud implementation, and then you've got an you'll lose the will to live, and also, more importantly, you'll lose the support of your sponsors who are going, I watched a video and said this will be available in 20 minutes, and you've already taken a month and a half to get Data Cloud working. So I think you need to pick some areas where you get some really quick wins, because there's quite a big gap between the marketing expectation and actually what it takes and what you can deliver. And you need to fill that gap fill that hole relatively quickly by going, if senior management have gone, okay, I'm up for building some agents, what can you build me? There's an almost unfair expectation that's been set by some of the marketing out there, and you need a fairly forgiving set of management, and therefore pick the easiest and fastest use case to show some benefits. So that means simple, internally focused, maybe like an FAQ type thing where people struggle to read documentation, and it's easy to get the answers out. Do not go Data Cloud. I mean, the worst thing in the world will be aggregate data, Data Cloud, customer facing for our most important customers. That just not unless you want a new job relatively quickly, having to go somewhere else. I mean, that's definitely CTM, career terminating move, is going for an Agentforce implementation like that. So pick something simple where you can get some quick wins relatively easily.
Yeah, that leads me on quite nicely, actually, because something that we've mentioned is return on investment for what you've implemented. So can you give me some, anecdotally or otherwise, what's the return on investment been for you as a business by implementing Agentforce? You mentioned the HR agent that you've built, and it's saving your HR person a whole bunch of time. Like, what's some of the ROI, like tangible, whether you can put figures to it or just anecdotal, like our HR person is happier now that they don't have 50 requests a day from our team?
So Jack, before you jump in, can I say something?
You
I don't care. I'm a CEO. I don't care about return on investment, which is really funny, because at the moment the return on investment is not, can I save 20 minutes here? The return at the moment is about, can we make sure that we're at the forefront of understanding how agents can be. We're all in learning mode. Yes, there is a return on investment, and Jack can talk about that. But I think if you go into this just going, I've got a spreadsheet, how's this going to work? You will never give yourself the permission to make mistakes and learn how agents work. I think that's the real problem at the moment. You've got to, the whole conversation about $2, is it 75? All of that pricing thing is largely irrelevant. The numbers are so small at the moment compared with learning how to make sure you're part of this new world. The very beginning of this podcast, we talked about, is this the biggest change ever? The answer is absolutely yes. And you can't evolve your way and go, Is there a return on investment for thinking about how the whole world works differently? No, there isn't. You've got to dive in and start learning, and the return on investment examples will come out. The first things may not. So I'll leave Jack to talk about what the real benefits we've now got are. But don't turn this into a spreadsheet operation example to start with. Otherwise, you'll never get started. So, sorry, Jack. I wanted to make sure I jumped in there because I think we've got people come at it from the wrong end, and they'll come out the end of the conversation going, "I've got my spreadsheet out, and Jack talked about the benefits for HR, and maybe we can use that." And you may never get them off the ground.
Yeah. So fundamentally, we're talking about future-proofing your business and being able to enter an agentic future, right? So that's fundamental level one. But yeah, Jack, some figures or some anecdotal stories would be great as well to back that up for the people that need the data.
Yeah.
Right?
Funny enough, I'm on the same page as Ian, but I think the biggest thing we've seen is from a leader who's I manage our internal operations, so it's not quite return on investment, but for me it's seeing one is it's getting the stakeholders' trust. So what we're building and what we're delivering and the agent is working is if we then go down and start implementing, I don't know, more agents, we bring in more complexity, we actually have the stakeholders trust that one, what we're delivering works, and two, the time they're spending with us in order to get these processes mapped and get an agent working is actually worth it. So that's one really important thing for me internally, is getting the trust of your internal stakeholders that what we're doing is effectively saving them time, and then they're going to see some return on investment. I think again, with my CIO hat on, what we're really starting to see is some of the benefits that Agentforce is giving us internally may change our system landscape and our tech stack moving forward. So, for example, a big part of the discovery coach is getting call transcripts. Currently, we're using an external software to get those call transcripts from, but there's an argument that because we're having to build metadata to bring the transcript in, etc. Well, Salesforce has this thing called Einstein Conversation Insights. Suddenly, there's a business case to possibly start using that as well, and we save dollar value on other software. So there's return on investment there as well, because our system landscape could change in time because of the benefits we're getting from agents. It's really hard to put a number on at the moment, so I'm very much with Ian. But for me, it's the trust of your internal stakeholder that the process you're working with them on and the agent you're delivering will work for them. So they're going to save time. They get the expenses one is a brilliant one. It's a bugbear in most businesses. It's a finance team and HR team constantly getting bugged about what can I expense. I'm unsure about the policies. Go and talk to the agent. They've given us the documentation. We're trusting and we're relying on this agent. So yeah, really hard to put a number on return on investment, but for me, it's the internal stakeholder trusting it and relying on it, I think.
I think there's an interesting one, which is as a competitive differentiator. So in the future, you may only want to work with companies that have got decent agents. Yeah. I don't want to sit for 45 minutes on a call center to talk to someone who's basically going to say, yes, you can return the product, or no, you can't. I'll work with companies. I'll buy from companies where I know they've got a really good agent, which is I can talk to, and they're going to give you decent answers. We're not there yet. I get that. But think about you arrive in a new company and go, God, the onboarding was amazing. They gave me an agent for HR. They gave me an agent for expenses, an agent for my systems. I didn't have to ask those embarrassing questions about, I kind of don't know how product X works, or I wasn't sure about the policy, or I really didn't want to ask in my first week about whether I should be flying premium economy or economy. That can all be done. So suddenly employees will go, I only want to work with companies that have got decent back-end systems, which means decent agents. So there's a differentiator there as well, which means you get to keep the best staff. You get to hire the best staff. And I think over time, people working in organizations going, what's the company's policy on agents? Oh, we're not allowed to use them. Why are you still working there? Okay, any forward-looking person who wants to build a career, I want to be on the forefront of this. I don't want to be sitting there looking at a green screen and legacy systems. I actually want to be in a company which is thinking about it. So I think there's some other aspects, and I know you can't build numbers around that, But I do think we'll see a reduction in our finance time, a reduction in our HR time, answering the busy questions 52 times, which they don't need to do, and the ability to grow faster. Some of the stuff that, Jack, you're building around supporting recruitment. So the recruitment agents that we're starting to build, so people can post a job rec more quickly. Some of those things I think will just smooth things off. Again, what's the ROI? Well, we won't need to hire a new HR assistant as we start to grow.
It's the same with the IT stuff. I mean, I'm working on a topic at the moment which is around IT support. So again, I'm leading the IT function internally, and it's the amount of, it's the questions are how do I reset my password, or normal case, like tedious, or I see as tedious case management effectively. It's questions from your end users that you sit there and go, okay, you need to spend time helping them. So again, there I'm going. Probably 6 months ago, I was forecasting I'm probably going to have to get an IT manager. I don't think I am anymore. I built this agent. It's answering the questions. It's creating cases to which I can then manage to get in. It's just, I do not need to hire anymore.
Yeah, gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been really, really insightful, and I've learned plenty about the real world experiences that you folks have, and some of how we should be thinking about agents and this agentic future that is being promised to us for sure. To take us home, can I have each of your opinions about what you're most excited about for the next year as businesses get more au fait with agents and the ecosystem generally gets a better understanding of how they can implement this technology?
Yeah, I'll start, Ian. So I think the biggest thing for me is I referred to it earlier is at the moment it's sometimes you're talking to a graduate in terms of the AI, so the responses they're giving you and how you're treating it and engaging with it is very much I'm going to compare it to a graduate level. These things are moving so quickly, and it's, to be honest, it's a joy coming to work at the moment because you don't know what's going to happen at the end of the week in terms of where we're going to be with AI for one, but also Agentforce second. I'm coming in on a Monday and going, what on earth's going to happen by Friday, which is brilliant. And it's in 2, 3, 4 months' time, the way this is going to go, it's going to be, I'm just really excited about the agentic future, to be perfectly honest with you. It's exciting.
Yeah, that very, very much reminds me of stories that I've heard from your CTO, Adrian, where he's like ripped up the entire playbook about what you were going to do because AI has come into the mix, and it's irrelevant now because we've done it. Ian?
I'm excited about those people who genuinely put the right things in place and get the benefits. So I think the next year we're going to see the really strong use cases coming out. And I think will support some of the marketing that said this is possible. We're now going to see some of that stuff in practice, and that's what I really want to see. Is I want to start seeing more examples like we've got, which is agents in working, helping people where they're genuinely being used, rather than elegant demos. And we'll see those in the next year. I'm sure they'll come through. And it's not everything that we're talking about in terms of process led is not just Agentforce. It's any agent platform. So it could be, Microsoft, it could be Crew AI, it could be ServiceNow, it doesn't matter. The principles about how we're applying agents is going to have to think of them as, the digital labor force and thinking about the process side of things. So I'm very enthusiastic, I'm very optimistic for those people who get their act together, build well-run businesses. Agents are just going to make them even better. The A in AI, I think, is augment. It makes the best things even better. Unfortunately, it makes the worst things even worse. You need to make sure you're on the right side of that.
Ian, Jack, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, an absolute delight, and see you both TDX, I understand.
Absolutely. We'll see you there.
Perfect. See you there. Thank you for listening, folks. Hope you've enjoyed the episode, and catch you all on another episode sometime soon.